I am the Omega Crown Prince of the Empire. In order to navigate through my heat cycle with ease, I secured a premier alpha at the auction, successfully completing the marking. However, when a prominent figure from the Alliance approached me demanding accountability, chaos ensued. Yet, I remained composed, taking a sip of tea and calmly stated, "I do not recognize him, throw him out." "Do not recognize?" The young alpha leader of the Alliance erupted in incredulous laughter, his large hand resting on my slightly protruding abdomen. "Your Highness, your belly has grown, how can you claim not to know me?" 1. The kaleidoscopic neon lights sliced through the air, enveloping the underground auction house in a haze of intoxicating allure. In this realm, beyond the jurisdiction of both the Empire and the Alliance, various factions reveled in their debauchery. The spotlight illuminated the center stage. Within the cage, the alpha bore a few scattered lacerations, his nearly perfect profile exuding an exquisite and torturous beauty. The host, almost impatient, sought to leverage the spectacle to elevate the fervor of the underground auction. The final item for bid, a top-tier alpha. Starting bid, 30,000 star coins. A top-tier alpha, indeed a rarity. I sat cross-legged on the highest tier of the underground auction house, eyes closed, savoring the moment. 90,000 star coins, 100,000 star coins. The figures surged, yet it was merely a warm-up for the prince's attendant. The real climax, as always, awaited in the wings. Suddenly, a bright female voice rang out from the upper levels. The Stan family bids 8 million star coins. The bidder was a striking Omega from the Stan family, who gazed with keen interest at the alpha in the cage, a smile of determination gracing her lips. The bidding gradually waned after all. No one wished to contend with the formidable Stan family. The alpha within the cage merely yawned lazily, seemingly indifferent to his fate. A few more bids emerged, but they were swiftly silenced by the Stan heiresses offered. I finally displayed a hint of impatience, lazily lowering my gaze, turning my back to the entire auction house, and raising my long-fingered hand. As the shimmering light cascaded upon my fingers, the entire auction house fell into an immediate hush. This was the most enigmatic upper tier of the auction house, and for the first time a bid was placed, 20 million star coins, sealing the deal. Shortly thereafter, staff members approached the stage, whispering something into the host's ear. The host then raised a courteous smile. "Apologies, everyone, but our buyer in auction room 1 has just sealed the deal for this final item. According to priority, they shall receive ownership of this item. Congratulations." The Stan heiress, who had once been so confident, suddenly wore a rather grim expression. Ignoring the staff's attempts to restrain her, she ascended to the upper tier amidst the gazes of onlookers. "Do you really think you can compete with me for an alpha, you Omega? You think you are worthy?" Having been in repose, I opened my eyes abruptly, casting a detached glance in her direction. Upon meeting my gaze, the Stan heiress staggered back in disbelief. The soft green hue of my eyes was a hallmark of the Imperial lineage, unique to the royal blood of the Empire. Such youthful royalty could only belong to the fabled Alpha Crown Prince born with a silver spoon. The Stan heiress could not suppress her astonishment, exclaiming, Your Highness." I placed a finger to my lips, softly hushing her, urging her to swallow back her subsequent words. A servant approached my side, presenting the signing document. "Sir, your item." I rose, extending my hand to reveal the exquisite watch adorning my wrist, and smoothly inscribed my signature on the auction slip. As the smoke began to rise, I leaned slightly, casting a fleeting glance downward. The item within the cage also lifted his gaze. His previously languid expression transformed, as if a hunter honing in on its prey, promptly locking onto the highest tier of the auction house. His gaze meeting mine with a chilling clarity. Our eyes interlocked, and beneath my mask, my lips curved into an almost imperceptible smile as the wind billowed my coat. I turned and departed, leaving a ripple in the air behind me. 2. As I stepped into the VIP lounge, Captain Cater received my casually tossed overcoat. Several high-ranking officials of the Empire were present, and upon seeing me, they reported with palpable anxiety. "Your Highness, there have been multiple explosions on several planets to the south. This marks the 5th major explosion this month. We have reasonable grounds to suspect that a force is conducting clandestine terror experiments, as we have extracted green crystals from all the debris. These are rare gemstones and a primary component of certain massive munitions. This not only indicates substantial financial backing behind these experiments." The reporting official paused, then raised his gaze. "Moreover, we are gravely concerned that the target of these experiments is the Empire." I cast a cursory glance at the report and turned to the elder statesman of the military. "Elder, what is your perspective?" The elder pondered. "Your Highness, based on the composition of the extracted debris, I venture to speculate that these experiments might aim to replicate a long-abandoned project by the Alliance known as the Interstellar Missile Program. They may have acquired remnants of the original experiments and wish to forge new interstellar missiles. The elder's words struck like thunder on a clear day, rendering all present with solemn expressions. Everyone in the room understood the implications of interstellar missiles. Should that missile, which existed only in legend, reappear, it would shatter the current balance of the interstellar landscape between the Empire and the Alliance. The entity that secures the core technology could leverage it to ascend as a new interstellar hegemon. I maintained a calm demeanor, my fingers tracing the debris, betraying no emotion. Is it people from the Alliance? It's hard to say, the elder replied respectfully at my side. But it is not just the Alliance. Nearly all factions in the cosmos are coveting interstellar missiles. However, as far as I know, the hardliners in the Alliance, led by Chairman Gu Hong, would never allow this matter to go unchecked. If we can ascertain it is not the Alliance's doing, we can simply wait for them to make the first move. I interrupted him non-committally. Elder, perhaps the Alliance is thinking along those lines as well. No one can resist the allure of interstellar missiles, and no one refrains from aspiring to interstellar dominance. The Alliance is no exception. I gazed out the window at the endless desert, reminiscent of the insatiable ambition of the world. As the debris slipped from my fingertips, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. If I were Gu Hong, I would choose to play the oriole, using those individuals to create interstellar missiles, then reaping the rewards, leveraging their experimental results to negotiate with the Empire. The elder's countenance dimmed slightly. I rubbed my temples in exasperation, gesturing for him to withdraw. Very well, Elder, you may leave now. Once the assembly of elder statesmen exited the room, I tore off the suppression patch affixed to my gland, and the pheromones inundated the entire space. Everyone knew that the Empire had a young heir born with a silver spoon, the sole grandson of the Lowen royal family. Yet, few were aware that this young heir was, in fact, soon to enter his first heat cycle. When Cater entered and beheld my condition, he was momentarily taken aback and instinctively reached out to steady me. Your Highness, are you all right? My complexion flushed with an unusual hue, my jaw quivering slightly. What about the item? Upon hearing my inquiry, Cater's grip involuntarily tightened. Your Highness, it has been secured in the 3rd level. I stifled my discomfort and closed my eyes. Cater, being a normal individual, could hardly endure the overwhelming pheromones filling the room. Your Highness, allow me to mark you. That item is unworthy of such a privilege. I beseech you, forgive my presumptuousness. Let me. My finger gently rested on his lips, signaling him to refrain from hastily pledging loyalty. Cater, how long have you been by my side? Cater gazed at me earnestly. 14 years, Your Highness. I regarded him, managing a faint smile. Then, I hope you can remain by my side a little longer. Cater's eyes suddenly dimmed, and he clenched his fists in frustration. Very well. 3. As I entered the 3rd level, the item naturally laid eyes upon me. Upon closer inspection, this object, valued at 20 million star coins, was remarkably handsome. Both his physique and features were nearly impeccable, save for the mouth that accompanied them. When was this hotel constructed? If memory serves, this was a desert, was it not? His hands casually rested on the shackles as he inquired. Hey, young heir, do you know? Recognizing me did not surprise me. After all, those striking green eyes were unmistakable. The kidnappers need not conduct any prior research or worry about mistaking their target. It was built a month ago. To preempt any further inquiries about who built it, I tilted my head and added, I dislike sandstorms, so I had my guards construct it. It will be dismantled afterward. His response left him momentarily speechless, and he finally muttered, impressive. The conversation was relentless. Young heir, I'm curious, what do you intend to do with me? I regarded him with indifference. To mark you. He was left momentarily dumbfounded. His expression transformed as if struck by lightning, and after a prolonged silence, he retorted with sarcasm. The tastes of your Imperial family are rather peculiar. With your petite stature, do you think you can manage? I believe you have misunderstood. I am not seeking your consent. My voice, once calm, now bore a husky quality due to my heat, as I slowly retrieved an inducer from my pocket. Rest assured, once this inducer is administered, even a bull could enter a heat. Realizing I was serious, he finally began to struggle. A forcibly picked fruit is not sweet. The shackles on his wrists clinked softly. A forced bond will not yield happiness. It has no future. Though I am an item, I possess my own boundaries and dignity. If you dare to impose forcibly, I will take my own life. Do not overthink it. My fingertip pressed against his lips. I have no intention of establishing a future with you. Once this period has passed, I shall send you to accompany your boundaries and dignity to the grave, preserving your chastity. What do you mean by this period? If you're in heat, go seek someone else. Why bully me? He continued to prattle, but suddenly caught a whiff of my pheromones in the air, and his previously defiant gaze faltered. Is it a heat cycle? Whatever thoughts crossed his mind, his eyes darkened. Just as I was about to proceed with my next move, he suddenly interjected, interrupting my action. Wait! I clutched his trousers, impatiently raising my eyes. What now? This position was exceedingly uncomfortable. I could only rub against his body for some relief. This time, he did not resist but rather lowered his gaze, eyes burning with intensity. Is your inducer from a legitimate source? If not, I brought my own. In the face of impending doom, he babbled on. I frowned and pushed the syringe to its deepest point. The voice of the item abruptly ceased, falling into a momentary silence, before he looked at me incredulously. Did you really inject the entire syringe? It was then I noticed the usage instructions on the syringe. This reagent contained 300 milliliters, with 10 milliliters per dose. It was only then that I realized the gravity of the situation. Tilting my head slightly, my already chaotic mind struggled to comprehend. The instructions merely stated that a single injection required 10 milliliters, yet I had clearly exceeded that dosage. In a moment of reckless abandon, I had administered a staggering 30 times the recommended amount, leaving me uncertain about the implications for its efficacy. It was evident that the individual before me lacked any experience in this regard. He merely raised his eyelids, his expression grim, and uttered a few words. You're finished. I could scarcely decipher his words, as the heat of my estrus surged through my body in an instant. My eyes took on a faint crimson hue and, with clumsy movements, I climbed onto his waist, slowly unfastening his clothing. The air was saturated with pheromones, potent and overwhelming, causing me to press my lips together in distaste. As I lowered my gaze to my actions, I noticed his eyes deepening with an intense darkness. The veins in his hands, bound by chains, throbbed with the strain of premature arousal, his breathing gradually becoming more labored. Release the chains. Let me show you some fun, he murmured, leaning closer, his breath warm against my ear. Playing alone is rather dull. Allow me to elevate the intensity. I lifted my gaze to meet his, striving to maintain the last flicker of clarity in my mind. However, his jade-green eyes glistened with the fervor of desire. As I pushed aside my hair and settled upon him, I coldly retorted, refrain from calling me brother. I have no need for siblings. My attention was wholly consumed by his lower half, entirely oblivious to the fact that the chains binding him had, at some unknown moment, succumbed to the pressure of his overwhelming strength, emitting a faint crack as they snapped free. In an instant, the roles had reversed. With his natural physical advantages, he seized control of this encounter effortlessly. Even later, when I curled up in a wardrobe, he simply plucked me from my hiding place with ease. He held my waist, almost insistently reiterating his earlier perverse and audacious demand. Little crown prince, let me see you drop another pearl. Having been thoroughly tormented by him, I unwittingly shed a tear of frustration. In response, he seemed to go wild, attempting to compel me to cry another tear with the overpowering influence of his pheromones. I bit down on my lip, my eyes misty, yet I stubbornly refused to grant him satisfaction. Bastard! He suddenly chuckled softly, one hand effortlessly encircling my waist. How adorably sweet you are. Even your pheromones are delightful. I whimpered, attempting to struggle, but his heated kiss silenced my protests. The pheromones intertwined within the room, rich and fervent. When I emerged from the third level, it was already the 7th day. My estrus had finally concluded. Upon seeing me, Cater looked at me with slightly reddened eyes, his thoughts a mystery. Only when I instructed him to dispose of the individual worth 20 million star coins did a genuine smile break across his face. Although my estrus had passed, my legs still trembled uncontrollably. Truly, I was a pitiable creature. I muttered to myself, then turned to Cater. Have you shown the dust to the lady of the Stan family? Cater replied solemnly, yes, but she adamantly claims ignorance. I adjusted my cuffs. Take me to her. In the dimly lit basement, the lady from the Stan family was in a wretched state. Upon seeing me, she lunged forward, intent on biting me, but the chains restrained her, leaving her to gnash her teeth at the air in frustration. Loin Huai, you are a devil. You, like your two mad fathers, are devils. Cold-blooded beasts. I smirked bitterly, slowly wiping away the blood that had splattered on my face from her desperate struggles. A devil, you say? If I truly were a devil, at least I would be a devil adorned with a beautiful visage, wouldn't I? Seeing that curses were ineffective, Miss Stan resorted to threats. I am the second young lady of the Stan family. If you dare to harm me, my family will not let you go. I chuckled lightly. But how do you know that today the second young lady of the Stan family has not returned home? As if realizing something, her face paled with terror. You! How dare you? My expression remained as calm as still water. How could I not dare? Or does Miss Stan possess such confidence that she believes her simplistic, lustful persona cannot be replaced? She shattered her last psychological barrier and succumbed to despair. I don't know. They didn't tell me. No, nothing at all? How truly unfortunate. I approached her slowly, unclasping her chains, causing her to lose her balance and crash heavily to the ground. Then what use do I have for you? As I turned to leave, she forced herself upright, struggling to grasp my ankle. It was Gu Hong. The interstellar missile experiments were orchestrated entirely by Gu Hong. Our family merely followed orders. Truly, it has nothing to do with me. As I exited the dark room, I leisurely wiped the blood from my hands. Cater approached my side. Your Highness, how credible do you find the words of Miss Stan? I replied nonchalantly, I don't know. At that moment, a panting attendant rushed over. It's bad, Your Highness. That person has escaped. I frowned slightly. Who has escaped? The attendant, breathless, finally managed to gasp. The 20 million. The one worth 20 million has fled. Run? Could he really escape? Maintaining my composure, I ascended to the observation tower. My gaze swiftly locked onto the figure racing across the desert. Turning my head slightly, I commanded Cater, fetch the sniper rifle. I set up the sniper rifle at the observation post, the red dot fixating on the fleeing figure, my finger poised on the trigger. Just then, a Federation aircraft descended onto the desolate ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Despite the obscuring sand, I instantly recognized the craft halting before him. This top-of-the-line aircraft bore an uncanny resemblance to its owner, adorned with dazzling colors and an audacious character, emblazoned with the Federation's most recognizable insignia. If this was indeed the private aircraft of the Federation chairman, my grip on the sniper rifle tightened. If he truly was Gu Hong, the supreme leader of the Federation, then I could not act against him, at least not at this moment. However, I absolutely could not allow him to leave with my secret. As my mind raced, the Federation soldiers disembarked from the aircraft, lining up in 2 rows, bowing respectfully as they welcomed him. Suddenly, as if sensing something, Gu Hong paused amidst his entourage, tilting his face slightly. In the dappled light of dawn, Gu Hong bent down, his long, elegant fingers brushing against the red in my scope, and he reverently pressed a kiss to it. My heart skipped a beat. I watched as the young, ambitious leader straightened, turning slightly toward my position, a subtle smile tugging at his lips as he parted them a few times before entering the aircraft. Through the scope, I distinctly observed the shape of his final words. Until we meet again. Public flirtation. For some reason, that phrase flashed through my mind. I instinctively lowered the sniper rifle, but soon, anger surged through me once more. Without knowing what I had picked up from my side, I instinctively swung it towards the direction of the spacecraft. The late-arriving chief eunuch gasped at the sight, nearly collapsing to his knees. Oh dear, my little ancestor. Quickly put down the rocket launcher. Put it down. It's dangerous. He then turned his furious gaze towards my side, where Katal stood helplessly, and bellowed, Katal, what are you doing? Hurry up and bring His Highness down. The chief eunuch conveyed the Emperor's decree, expressing the Emperor's deep longing for me, his grandson, and his desire for me to return to the palace at once. As soon as I entered, the Emperor seized my hand. Why, come here quickly. The Emperor led me to a group of individuals, all bare-chested, showcasing their lean, muscular physiques, obediently kneeling on the ground. The Emperor, brimming with enthusiasm, declared, Why, I recall that you are about to experience your first heat cycle, are you not? It is truly unbearable. Just tell me whom you fancy, and I shall arrange it for you. I nodded slightly, Your Majesty, actually Yet, at that moment, a sharp pain shot through the back of my neck, and the overpowering scent of a dominant pheromone swiftly engulfed the grand hall, causing all present to display expressions of grave concern. The Emperor's complexion shifted into a myriad of colors, and this seasoned ruler of the empire found himself facing a significant hurdle in life, his voice trembling as he spoke. Lifelong marking, who did it? I lowered my gaze, pursing my lips in silence. The Emperor scanned the room, landing a piercing glare on Katal, the most likely suspect, and upon receiving Katal's innocent look, he completely lost composure. How could you, why, just come of age, and yet someone so psychologically normal would not engage in such actions? I felt a twinge of guilt as I began to speak. Actually, I hesitated, recalling the Emperor's long-standing disdain for the alliance, and decided it prudent to refrain from provoking him further. Thus, I swallowed my words and simply stated, actually, he is dead. The Emperor. He likely did not anticipate that the matter would be so fleeting, and after a moment of stunned silence, he gritted his teeth and muttered, at least he died quickly. Meanwhile, in the alliance, the flamboyantly dressed president, just stepping off the spacecraft, sneezed. The speaker observed his demeanor with a sense of amusement, remarking, "It seems the president's journey has not gone smoothly." Not merely unsmooth, Gu Chang mused silently. Not only had his innocence been stripped away, but he had also nearly lost his life. At that moment, his aide inquired with timely concern, "I've heard that Miss Stan did not take your photograph." "President, it appears your attempts at leveraging your charm did not catch her eye." Upon receiving Gu Cheng's frosty glare, the aide's eyes brightened, and his tongue hastily twisted. "President, I suddenly recalled that the rabbit at home is about to give birth. I must return to care for it. I shall take my leave." Observing the spectacle, the rabbit-raising Gu Chang felt a wave of despair wash over him. The future of the alliance truly seemed all too predictable. Lost in thought, Gu Chang abruptly turned to his aide and asked, "That rabbit of yours, it doesn't bite, does it?" The aide, bewildered, stopped in his tracks and replied, "Not at all. Rabbits are usually gentle and rarely bite." "Is that so?" Gu Cheng's lips involuntarily curled into a smirk. "That is not the case with my rabbit. Not only does it bite, but it also clings to you for 7 days and nights, refusing to let go." The aide was left speechless, perplexed by his superior's eccentricity. Catal pinpointed the location of the experiment, and upon glancing at it, I realized it was situated in a remote area of the alliance. Therefore, I changed into a different outfit, accompanied by a few loyal soldiers, and stealthily infiltrated the laboratory. As I descended from the ventilation shaft, I unexpectedly landed on someone's shoulder. The furtive individual reacted swiftly, grabbing me and pinning me against the wall, where I suddenly found myself staring into familiar eyes. "What are you doing here?" Gu Chang shot me an irritated glance, lowering his voice. "This is our alliance's territory, Crown Prince. How can you brazenly ask such a question?" I merely tilted my head, choosing to ignore his inquiry as I peered into the inner workings of the laboratory, where lab-coated researchers hustled to and fro, data fluctuating on the screens. Just as I wished to observe more closely, I felt someone gripping my waist from behind, an uncomfortable sensation washing over me. "Huai, your pheromones seem different from before?" I frowned slightly. "Huai is not a name you can call me." However, the insufferable individual merely bit into the nape of my neck. Akin to a wolf teasing a rabbit in a confined space, no matter how much the rabbit kicked and struggled, it resembled nothing more than a prelude to a meal. "Huai, I'm about to reel you in." It was unclear how they communicated, but the Alliance personnel swiftly surrounded the entire underground laboratory, bringing the leading figure before Gu Chang. He emerged from behind a cabinet beneath the ventilation shaft, his fitted suit accentuating his tall frame, exuding an air of refined arrogance as he apathetically cast his gaze upon the kneeling figure. "Stan Seiler? Is that correct?" Caught off guard by the sudden arrest, Stan Seiler surprisingly maintained composure. "President Gu, long time no see. I've heard much about your promising talents. Seeing you today, it is indeed true." Gu Chang detected his calm demeanor. "You dare to stir up trouble right under my nose, yet you seem to think I would not kill you?" Stan Seiler's sickly smile bore a hint of madness. "Of course not. President Gu has yet to obtain what he desires. He would not easily dispose of me. Moreover, you will collaborate with me to create interstellar missiles, won't you?" Gu Chang squatted slightly to meet his gaze, blood staining his white gloves. "You think I care about that thing?" Stan Seiler laughed, shrugging nonchalantly. "Young leaders often possess two traits, arrogance and ambition. In you, President Gu, I see both. You are ambitious, yearning to conquer the stars, and you need that interstellar missile to fulfill your grand aspirations." Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Gu Cheng's hand lowered as he shot Stan Seiler in the leg. A faint smile crept across Gu Cheng's lips as he holstered his weapon. "You truly misunderstand me, Mr. Stan Seiler. Rather than conquering the stars, I would prefer to face difficulties and enjoy a good sleep. Furthermore, I detest when individuals feign knowledge in my presence." Stan Seiler's face contorted in pain, but upon seeing me, or more precisely, my light green eyes, he suddenly burst into laughter. I wondered how President Gu could conceal a beauty. "However, you are rather foolish to be so thoroughly deceived by this one. Do you genuinely believe that the power of an interstellar missile merely entails the destruction of a city?" Gu Cheng's expression shifted slightly. Stan Seiler, having witnessed everything, erupted into laughter. "Gu Chang, despite your brilliance, You fail to comprehend the true effects of the interstellar missile, allowing yourself to be misled to your demise. Just like your crown prince, he will not inform you of what the interstellar missile truly signifies. For he is as foolish as his mad scientist father, abandoning such a promising project. However, that era will inevitably arrive. Once Pandora's box is opened, there shall be no peace. Gucheng, what good will it do if you gun me down here? Disregarding the fact that the Empire has already established a formidable interstellar missile technology, countless individuals will undoubtedly traverse this path further into the future, heralding the inevitable era of war. If the Alliance lacks interstellar missiles as a foundation, it will inevitably drag the entire coalition into becoming mere cannon fodder for conflict. A sudden bang echoed as Siler's words hung in the air, a bullet piercing through his chest. He stared wide-eyed, his breath ceasing. Guheng turned, casting his gaze upon the smoking gun in my hand, and I met his gradually dimming eyes with indifference. The soldiers of the Alliance, encircling us, were poised to aim their weapons at me when suddenly Guheng lowered his head, discovering the warm muzzle of a gun pressed against his waist. With the unguarded vulnerability of his back, I found my opportunity was not difficult to seize. Guheng glanced down at the weapon that pressed against him, then lifted his gaze back to me, his expression unchanged. Why, what are you doing? I looked at him, my voice hoarse as I declared, withdraw the troops, destroy all experimental data here. The air fell silent for a moment, and then Guheng chuckled lightly, wrapping one hand around the muzzle of my gun, his tone soft yet unyielding. Why, you are too greedy. This data must belong to the Alliance. I raised my eyes to meet his. Are you not afraid that I might be displeased and pull the trigger? Guheng regarded me, seemingly pondering something, before slowly aiming the gun at the location of his heart. I am the chairman of the Alliance. Everything must prioritize the Alliance. If what Siler said is true, then the Alliance must master the technology for developing interstellar missiles. Any sacrifice before that is worth it. So I am sorry, why, go ahead and shoot. I pressed the gun, remaining silent, simply gazing at him, my finger trembling on the trigger. In an instant, a lab personnel broke free from their restraints, tossing a package of explosives our way. A brilliant flash of red engulfed the scene, and blood splattered. A robust figure lunged forward, tackling me into a corner, shielding me with his back against the impending explosion. My head struck something, and I lost consciousness in an instant. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in my palace. Struggling to sit up, I caught sight of a royal physician taking my pulse nearby, and then met a pair of concerned sea-green eyes. I pressed my lips together and respectfully lowered my head, attempting to rise from the bed to pay my respects. Your Majesty. The Emperor promptly pressed my hand down. Why, you needn't rise, just lie back. He then turned to the physician. How is the Crown Prince's condition? The physician's hand trembled suddenly, and he hurriedly bowed his head to the ground. Your Majesty, the Crown Prince. I realized something, withdrawing my hand from the couch. My tone, surprisingly calm even to myself, inquired, am I pregnant? This statement rendered the physician speechless, and the Emperor seemed momentarily taken aback. He looked at me uncertainly. Why? The probability of conception during the first estrus and mating is 99. Proved that I was not fortunate enough to fall into that one. As I noticed the physician nodding in despair, the Emperor found it challenging to accept. Why? What are your thoughts on this? I lowered my gaze, remaining silent, slowly caressing my abdomen. It was a peculiar feeling. Though my belly was still flat, a tiny life was already stirring within. The Emperor pondered briefly, then surmised. I heard that during the explosion, it was Guheng who protected you, preventing your injury. Guheng is not a good person. He could never have acted out of kindness to save a political rival of the Alliance. Why? Tell me honestly, does this child carry the surname Gu? I remained silent for a long moment before sighing. He does not bear the surname Gu. As the Emperor's expression shifted in shock, I finally lifted my gaze. My eyes were resolute, yet held a rare gentleness. This child will only carry the surname Luo. I was uncertain of Gu Heng's condition, but according to Cater, he was remarkably resilient, awakening within 3 days, even a day earlier than I did. However, what troubled me was that the Alliance swiftly issued a directive to resume the development of interstellar missiles, all archive data being reinstated. If this continued, it was merely a matter of time before interstellar missiles would be developed again. Yet such weapons must not re-emerge in the world. The calamity of that experiment was sufficient for a lifetime. Thus, I instructed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to draft a letter to the Alliance, requesting them to send representatives to discuss national affairs collaboratively. It was no surprise when Guheng personally arrived. Dressed in a fitted trench coat, He descended from the aircraft, followed by a cadre of impeccably attired officials. I sat in the diplomatic chamber, weary and resting my forehead, quietly listening to the foreign minister and the alliance diplomats engage in a verbal duel. Our empire has no interstellar missiles. What? Do you have any proof? It's your alliance that has been obsessed with developing interstellar missiles for years. If you want to go to war, just say so. Come on. Am I afraid of you, you little brat? Have some decency, empire. This technology was developed using our alliance's resources. Don't take advantage and then pretend to be innocent. Just provide a copy of the original data to the alliance, and this matter can be settled. Oh, it was your alliance that developed it? Who did the research? Of course, it was our executives. Then go find your executives. Why involve our empire? How dare you say that? If it weren't for your shameless prince's relentless pursuit, would our executives have followed your dog of a prince? Who are you calling a dog prince? Yes, our prince may be a dog, but who are you from the alliance to insult him? The atmosphere in the room was chaotic and thick with pheromones, making me, a pregnant woman, exceedingly uncomfortable. I voiced my discomfort, glancing at Gu Heng seated across from me. Chairman Gu, what do you think? Gu Heng, oblivious to my distress, crossed his long legs. I think it's quite simple. Either the Empire and the Alliance share the interstellar missile technology, or the Alliance conducts its own research. I instinctively interjected. The experiments on interstellar missiles must cease immediately. Gu Heng responded directly. Then the Alliance must at least have half of the missile data. I fought against the nausea rising in my stomach. That is impossible. Gu Heng remained unfazed, calmly stating, then there is nothing to discuss. Your Highness, just as the Empire distrusts the Alliance cannot place its trust in the Empire. In matters of safety, the Alliance will never concede. Hearing Gu Heng's words, my stomach churned unexpectedly, and I covered my mouth, retching uncontrollably. The sound of my retching abruptly silenced the previously noisy conference room, all eyes turning toward me. I braced myself against the table, instinctively protecting my abdomen. Perhaps due to the prolonged absence of pheromonal comfort, this little one was now expressing its discontent in a different manner. My hand curled around the table's edge, cold sweat dripping from my forehead, cascading down my cheeks to the floor. Cater, who was closest, noticed something was amiss and quickly approached my side, removing his garment to cover the mess on me. I lost strength, leaning against his broad shoulder, as Cater, in the presence of Gu Heng, swiftly scooped me up, hurrying towards the inner palace before the Alliance personnel could react. The Crown Prince is in distress. Summon the royal physician quickly. The Alliance representatives were blocked by guards at the entrance. Although discontent simmered within them, they could only look to Gu Heng at the head of the table, obeying his commands. The young leader of the Alliance, having made countless astute judgments in the past, has adeptly guided the Alliance onto the righteous path. It is certain that he now comprehends the Empire's limits concerning interstellar missiles, endeavoring to maximize the Alliance's interests. However, something seemed to dawn on this young leader, causing his expression to shift abruptly. He rose and approached the door, his gaze penetrating as he looked towards the figure tightly held in Cater's embrace, hastily departing. Observing Gu Heng's peculiar demeanor, his secretary cautiously inquired, Chairman, shall we continue our experiments? Gu Heng remained silent, his eyes deepening in thought as his slender fingers gripped the steel pen. Upon opening my eyes, I found Gu Heng standing tall by the window, lost in contemplation. The air was thick with pheromones. Although my father's pheromones were known to have a calming effect during pregnancy, the intensity was overwhelming. Could you possibly restrain your pheromones? I murmured as I curled up, pulling the covers over me and revealing only my slightly reddened eyes that blinked at Gu Heng. I feel as though I'm suffocating. Gu Heng hurriedly opened the window, and only when the pheromones began to dissipate could I manage to catch my breath. Upon lifting my gaze, I found Gu Heng's intense eyes fixed on my abdomen, and with a nervous gulp, he tentatively asked, Why? May I touch it? Perhaps due to maternal instinct. I was not particularly fond of anyone touching my belly. Nonetheless, I averted my gaze and, in a somewhat bashful manner, replied, You may. Instantly elated by my consent, he pressed his hand upon my abdomen. It seemed the little one inside sensed the presence of his other father, immediately becoming calm. Gu Heng suddenly declared, with unwavering determination, Mine. The assertion was definitive. Noticing my silence, Gu Heng, emboldened, wrapped his arms around me from behind, adding, Why is also mine. My body, still heavily reliant on pheromones, reciprocated his somewhat audacious actions, and I nestled into his warm embrace. Gu Heng, Are you not afraid that I might use the child as bait to compel you into making concessions during negotiations? I detected a gentle sigh from Gu Hong behind me. Then I shall accept that. Why, I am no saint. I am merely an ordinary man. As the chairman of the alliance, I must be accountable to it. Yet I am also yours, responsible for Why and our child. He then blew a warm breath against my ear. Why, does your status as the crown princess have a lifetime provision? I turned to face him and, with a swift motion, pinned him beneath me. Gu Hong, concerned that my actions might harm the child, shielded my waist with his hands, his striking eyes watching me with amusement. What is this? Does Chairman Gu feel that the alliance's 5-year term is unsatisfactory and finds our empire's lifetime system more intriguing? My fingertip lightly pressed against Gu Heng's lower lip. The esteemed chairman of the alliance, my crown princess is not a position to be taken lightly. Should one aspire to become my crown princess, they must fulfill the duties of such. Gu Heng's hands remained protectively around me as he chuckled softly and gradually leaned in to kiss my lips. It is my utmost honor, my crown princess. Due to the dual affliction of both the crown prince and the alliance chairman, the subsequent negotiation process was largely entrusted to the respective foreign ministries. Days later, the alliance and the empire reached a consensus agreement, a technical blockade on interstellar missiles in other regions, with a stipulation that the empire would refrain from employing interstellar missiles against the alliance for a century. After signing the agreement, Gu Hong departed with the alliance delegation, leaving behind several vials of preserved pheromones. I stood on the city wall, watching the spacecraft gradually diminish into a mere speck against the sky. Cater approached my side, casually draping his coat over his arm. Your Highness, I have heard that the alliance's experiments have not ceased. They may not relinquish their pursuits so easily. My expression remained unchanged as I recalled Gu Heng's promise whispered in my ear the previous night, prompting Cater to assist me with my coat. If that day truly comes, then let us declare war. My eyes turned cold as I gazed down at the Empire's land from the city wall. The Empire's iron cavalry has long been thirsty for blood. When I visited His Majesty, my pregnancy had become increasingly apparent. The Emperor ignored me and directly inquired of my attendant, "Has Gu Hong sent any correspondence these past few days?" Upon receiving a negative response, I felt the temperature around me plummet. The Emperor scoffed derisively. Humph. I stepped forward, grasping His Majesty's hand. The Alliance's official duties are demanding. Oversights are inevitable. The Emperor shot me a look of disappointment. Why? They are not worth your affection. If he treats you this way while you carry his child, what might he do in the future? Then, with a cunning smile, the Emperor instructed, watch closely. I shall only teach this once. The Emperor summoned an internal attendant and retrieved a letter from within his robe. Deliver this to Chairman Gu of the Alliance, stating that the Crown Prince's coming-of-age ceremony is approaching, and invite him to witness it. Just as the attendant was about to take the letter, the Emperor withdrew it, adding, and be sure to inform him that our Loin royal family designates the principal consort during the coming-of-age ceremony. Should he dare to arrive late, let him prepare for the rites of a concubine. The attendant finally accepted the letter and departed to carry out the task. I wished to say more, but upon hearing that Marshal Callier had entered the palace for an audience, I had no choice but to withdraw. On the day of the coming-of-age ceremony, I approached the Emperor alone. He personally crowned me with a laurel, and I bowed my head, donning the crown that symbolized imperial authority. The crowning signified my formal claim to the Empire's inheritance. The handsome Wei Yuan approached my side, his smile warm. Your Highness, it is a pleasure to meet you for the first time. I nodded slightly, and Wei Yuan, unreserved, took a seat beside me. I could surmise that this was a grand gift prepared by the Emperor for Gu Hong, casting a sidelong glance at the Emperor, who merely withdrew his gaze, as if to suggest I handle matters independently. During the banquet, Wei Yuan served me some dishes. Although the food posed no conflict with my little one, the delicate creature would reject anything I consumed. This startled Wei Yuan, causing him to fumble. Your Highness, what is wrong? I remained silent, feeling inexplicably aggrieved, my eyes slightly reddening. At that moment, an attendant rushed in, whispering in my ear, Your Highness, someone from the Alliance has arrived. I lowered my gaze. Did His Majesty not say that latecomers would not be admitted? The attendant hesitated for a moment, then awkwardly replied, But he claims to be your crown princess. I scoffed internally. Bring him in. When Gu Hong was presented before me, he appeared somewhat disheveled. He had come without an entourage, having hurried here, his breath still uneven. I pretended to scrutinize him seriously before my lips curled into a smirk. I do not recognize him. Throw him out. To my surprise, The flustered figure nearly burst into laughter. Do not recognize me? Gu Heng leaned closer, his presence firm against my belly. He whispered into my ear in a voice meant only for us, Your Highness, the Crown Prince, your belly has grown, and yet you claim not to know me? In front of all assembled, Gu Chang lifted me effortlessly and carried me straight to the bedroom. It was only upon our arrival that I struggled to push him away, the crown atop my head teetering precariously. With a playful smile, Gu Chang regarded me. Are you angry? I turned my face away. No. Do you have any idea how long I waited for you on the city wall? I bit down on his hand, but alas, his skin was tough and resilient, leaving my teeth aching instead. What brings you here? You might as well not come at all. Just stay in the alliance and await a lonely old age. Gu Chang wrapped me snugly in the blanket, his eyes twinkling with mirth. The little rabbit has bristled. Yet you claim not to be angry? I must attend my coming-of-age ceremony at home, of course. I lifted my gaze to him once more. Have you devised a plan? Gu Chang replied with a thoughtful his demeanor shifting to one of gravity as he settled beside me. A general named Hua in the alliance has proposed a research plan on anti-missile technology, and this resolution was passed last week. The future direction of the alliance is solely focused on developing devices to counter interstellar missiles, aiming to maintain a long-term balance between the alliance and the empire. Gu Chang clasped my hand within the cocoon of blankets. All our worries will not come to pass. The future of the stars will undoubtedly be bright and resplendent, where all will lead happy and fulfilling lives, including our children. We were close together, each of us feeling the fervent beating of the other's heart. After a lengthy pause, I turned my gaze to the window. How much longer is your term? Gu Chang glanced at me, then followed my gaze to the stars outside. 3 months. After a moment of silence, I let out a soft sigh. Don't make me wait too long. Our child will miss you. Gu Chang's pheromones enveloped the room, and I was unaware when I drifted off to sleep in his embrace. He leaned down, gently kissing my forehead. I won't let Huai Huai wait long, nor will I make Huai Huai wait any longer. 3 months later, the office of the Alliance's council received a letter of resignation from the chairperson. When the elderly council president rushed into the chair's office, he found Gu Chang packing his belongings. Recognizing the old man's tendency to create a scene, Gu Chang took the initiative. Old council president, let me speak first. People aspire to ascend, and water flows downward. Without dreams, how is one different from a salted fish? I have found a better path, and I shall follow my family's surname, Luo. Thus, it is best we maintain some distance to avoid misunderstandings that might affect my family's status in the empire. The old president inhaled deeply, nearly choking on his words. Since the visit to negotiate with the alliance, he had sensed something amiss. Yet he hadn't anticipated that Gu Chang had covertly made his choice. Gu Chang, while the Imperial royal family may possess certain alluring traits, you grew up in the alliance. How can you betray the spirit of the alliance to accept the empire's decadent feudal hierarchy? Is this not a descent into depravity? Consider the alliance where everyone is equal and power is separated. What an ideal political environment. With your capabilities, you could easily be re-elected. Gu Chang twirled the pen in his hand with disdain. Stop painting pretty pictures, old man. An ideal political environment means I argue with the council until 3 in the morning, only to rise at 7 to continue the debate? If it weren't for you all coming to the military academy to promote the so-called spirit of the alliance, I wouldn't have been swept up and deceived into becoming the chairperson. 5 years. Do you know how I endured them? Even the oxen in the fields weep at the sight of me. Seeing that flattery failed, the old president resorted to moral coercion. Gu Chang, think about it. When future generations speak of you, they will label you as someone who forsook loyalty for beauty, a traitor to the alliance. How will the successors of the alliance perceive you, the former chairperson who once pledged allegiance to it? Gu Chang remained unfazed, smoothly packing his last piece of luggage into the spacecraft. Alternatively, future generations might see me as the alliance chairperson who bore humiliation and hardship to forge ties with the empire. What about your dignity? The president had never encountered such shamelessness. Seeing Gu Chang resolutely leave, he exclaimed in frustration, I can offer more money, triple your base salary. Gu Chang, who had been so resolute in his departure, suddenly paused. Just as the elderly president thought he might have a change of heart and grasped the young man's hand tearfully, Gu Chang swiftly twisted away. To hell with you, old deng. The former chairperson, eager to escape, leaped into the spacecraft. No amount of money can keep me from the warmth of my wife and children. Gu Chang then pressed the accelerator to the maximum without a backward glance, leaving the old council president fuming in disbelief. As night deepened, I lingered in the bath for quite some time before finally opening my eyes amidst the steamy haze. I donned a light shirt and approached the bedside. Just as I lifted the bed curtain, a large hand pulled me inside. I struggled. Gu Cheng's familiar voice resonated from behind. Why, it's me. In the darkness, there was a moment of silence. I turned to see Gu Cheng's bright, beautiful eyes gazing at me with deep affection. After a lengthy pause, I instinctively asked, devoid of emotion, "Have you bathed?" His bright eyes dimmed, resembling a large dog rejected by its master. Why do you not inquire about my journey through wind and rain, the arduous travel? You greet me with disdain. What does that say about our relationship? Consider it my good temper. Sensing the slight movement where Gu Chang had touched, I sighed, almost helplessly. Your spacecraft has a top-tier automatic cruise mode. If you truly were fatigued from travel, it is likely due to your excessive energy, jumping around in the spacecraft and making it hard to sleep, which is hardly deserving of sympathy. I tousled his messy hair, then, with no hint of emotion, bit my lip. So now go take a shower. When little Xingxing was born, Gu Chang sent a congratulatory telegram back to the Alliance that same night, proudly announcing the arrival of his son. I gazed at the wide-eyed infant, marveling at Gu Cheng's formidable genes. Aside from inheriting my soft green eyes, little Xingxing mirrored Gu Chang in nearly every other regard, particularly his mischievous smile, reminiscent of a sly wolf. The young former chairperson cradled the child, showering him with affection. Little Xingxing, such a good boy, smile for me. The swaddled infant responded with a tiny grin. Gu Chang beamed like a fool. I watched him, my eyelashes casting shadows as they fluttered. Perhaps due to my father being the only chief executive in the Alliance, I had never shared the disdain for it that others from the Empire did. Thus, I did not consider my union with Gu Chang particularly shocking, until I caught a glimpse of something in Gu Cheng's eyes that I had never seen in my father's, the essence of loyalty, an unwavering loyalty to the beliefs of the Alliance. If he were only for little Xingxing, perhaps I should not confine him here. I dropped the curtain and, without a word, walked out. Sensing something was off, Gu Chang hastily placed the child down and followed me outside. Why? I turned to him with sudden seriousness. Gu Chang, is it because I am pregnant with the little star that you chose to remain in the Empire? If it is for the sake of the little star, then what about now? Gu Chang seemed to anticipate my overthinking, and with a decisive motion, he pinned me against the outer wall. How could that be? The only one I cherish is Why. Gu Chang pressed against my gland, breathing softly. Of course, Why, who will bear our little treasure, is even more precious. A beautiful addition. I sensed his restlessness and instinctively attempted to retreat, only to be drawn back into his embrace. Why, I am in a sensitive period. His words were exceedingly earnest. It appeared that I had no grounds for refusal. My fingers unconsciously curled against the wall. I acquiesced to his advances, allowing him to indulge as he pleased. At that moment, a sound echoed. Thud. Gu Chang and I simultaneously glanced down to see a half-tube of the inducer lying on the ground. Time seemed to freeze for a brief instant. I lifted my gaze to him. Coolly. Why? Gu Chang attempted to feign innocence once more, but I did not grant him the opportunity. Swiftly slamming the door shut behind me, I truly chuckled, albeit with a tinge of heartache. I was but a fool. As night fell, a cool breeze wafted through. Outside the window, someone effortlessly climbed in. I sensed the movement and was about to speak when I was silenced by an urgent and fervent kiss. Simultaneously, I felt another part of me being pressed against with intense heat. I struggled violently but found myself utterly unable to resist him. Gu Chang wickedly nibbled on my earlobe. By the way, I took the remainder of that half-tube as well. Why, you can't possibly bully a patient, can you? The end of the story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking to show your support. Until we meet again in the next tale.